Here we go into game 24. Oh, gotta refresh that quest.
Versus Taranda.
Up against Priest, Lord of Math.
The forest fights
So against
back.
Priest, I'm still not quite decided on how I want to mulligan against Priest. I think card draw is pretty good. Loatheb is great. And then after that, the question is do we mulligan against Divine Spirit Inner Fire or against Big Priest or Rizaka's Priest? So I tossed that hand. The Rising Winds is a pretty good pickup. It's decent against Divine Spirit Inner Fire, and we can cycle it against the slower versions. So our opponent plays Awaken the Makers, which makes me think that there's some sort of control Reno deck. This is the type of value deck a lot of players like to play when they're not comboing with Raza Priest. So we'll just keep cycling. Looking for our big value cards. Opponent not doing much over there. Probably got a lot of removal in their hand. So I'll just keep drawing. No need to put out a creature that's just going to get removed. We'll just draw into our big stuff.
Nature's blessings upon you. Blessings.
Turn 5, the game kind of starts for real now. The first creature's played, Sludge Belcher. So from here, we're going to try to empty our hand so it's just Elise, Zephyrus, Flute, Enzoth, and Zola. We want to Elise the Zola, Zephyrus, Flute, and Enzoth. And with that much value, we should be able to get through whatever this deck is going to throw at us. So here I'm just playing the 6 mana. So our opponent plays 2 Shadow Word Pains here, which tells us it's actually not a Reno deck. So now, thinking it could be a combo deck that does something with Death Rattles. Or just a variant on Big Priest with a focus on Death Rattle minions. We've noticed they haven't played many high or low costing creatures, only the high costing creatures with Death Rattle. So here I decide to remove their Cartoon Defender. I don't want to give them a chance to use their hero power to get more value. And we're going to pave the way for the Poisonous. I don't think they're going to run Potion of Madness. It looks like they're a Resurrect style deck, so they won't want to run that card. Sure enough, there's a Resurrect. Well, it's called pretty good with Cartoon Defender.
That was wild.
So I decide they're not really putting up much pressure, so we can probably just keep trying to dump our hand. We are going to need to play that Alkaloid at some point. Might as well play it now when they don't have much of a board. So first we're going to clear off their big Cartoon, Archfor, and Alkaloid. No need to trade into their creatures. Right now they're 1/1s. If we trade in, they become 3/1s.
Pain and suffering await you.
Here they finish their quest. The Amara. Another Kartut Defender. It's looking like it's going to be a long game. I'm going to need all the value we can get, so we're just going to want to continue dumping our hand. So here I'm looking at how many cards do I want to draw with the Alkaloid. I'm looking at my deck size, I'm looking at my hand size.
Now how about...
And you could really go either way here, I think. You could try to draw extra cards off the Alkaloid, or just try to dump the hand.
Shall not save.
I decide I want to keep drawing into our cheap removal, so if we start losing the board, we can win it back. That's the main way we lose this. It's just if we lose tempo, which can definitely happen. Value-wise, we have infinite value, so we'll never really lose value-wise.
Time grows short.
Decided to put the silence on their reliquary. I don't really want them getting that back with Enzoths or other reborn effects, because it'll make it harder to fatigue them, but that's what this game comes down to. Albatross, now I'm wishing of course I'd saved the Spellbreaker. The Albatross does turn off all of our Reno effects. And so here I'm thinking I want to brand Zola our Spellbreaker. And then Spellbreaker the Albatross. We do lose Zola as a duplicate target in our Elise chain. However, Spellbreaker is pretty good to have in this matchup. I'm also looking at our opponent's hand. They only have 5 cards, one of which is Amara. And I'm looking at our hand, and I'm thinking we have way more value in our hand. If we just keep putting out enough threats, our opponent will run out of answers at some point. Here we got the Flute Oasis Surger. I decided it's time to trade off the Crystal Merchant. We've drawn plenty of cards I don't want to keep drawing.
Look at me.
Do want to clear that Albatross in case they copy it somehow. And so something else I just remembered, I also wanted to draw a lot of cards because in case they run Psychic Screen, we're going to want to be able to turn through our deck fast of all the small creatures they might shuffle into our deck. In case our Reno effect gets turned off, and also if they do shuffle in more Albatrosses into our deck somehow, we want to have a small deck so we draw into the birds fast.
Tonight, a tale of glorious redemption.
Here we got Barnes on Thalnos. Thalnos is a very interesting card to have in a big priest-style resurrect deck. They only have 4 cards in hand, so it's definitely worth silencing the Thalnos. Keep them off of their resources. And otherwise, just keep dumping cards. We're gonna keep dumping cards that are not the key ones we want to duplicate with Elise. So we definitely don't need a duplicate Tar Creeper, don't need a duplicate. Spellbreaker is an okay one to duplicate, but it's not great. I just throw out our Wrath here because I'm really wanting to play Elise here soon. Our opponent's low in resources. I want to start playing Enzoths soon. Decide to keep the Mulch and the Spell Stone, as those are really good and flexible removal spells compared to the Wrath. So I think this is the turn we want to play Elise. Want to make sure we have a big enough hand size, so we play the Steladris first. We don't want to overdraw, so we're going to burn one of our cards and decide to use up a Spell Stone. Normally a card that's worth keeping, but when you're against a super slow control deck, even 1 mana deal 6 is not that important to hold on to. So another thing to keep in mind here is Zephyrus does give Bloodlust and Savage Roar, so as long as we have a big board and our opponent is at low enough health, we can always just lethal them out of nowhere. Good play by our opponent here, playing the Albatross and then the Mass Hysteria, making sure that those Albatross are shuffled into our deck, turning off our Reno effects. I'm just going to try ends off here.
You are safe now.
They wisely play Amara. And Seance our own Enzoth, which is really good for them. Luckily for us, we draw into our Albatross, one of the Albatrosses, so Zephyrus is turned on. Here, I'm thinking Bloodlust might be lethal. If I stopped the count, I would have realized it was not lethal. I might have still played the Zephyrus. Anyways. Gives us a Doomhammer. Do not want to play Soul of the Forest. Don't want to fill up our board with 2/2s. We try to keep our board clear after a board wipe, so we can play Enzo.
This'll be good. This'll be good.
Now, the Zephyrus play was not bad here, even though it wasn't a Bloodlust. Getting the Doomhammer out can help push a bit more damage. And so the most likely play is the ends off, but of course we can just trade in one of our minions, play another Zephyrus, and mass the spell for lethal. I decided to go with the 4 mana Floop Zephyrus, so Zephyrus is more likely to give us mass the spell, hopefully with 4 mana left. He does give us the mass the spell.
Well played.
And that's a good game. Interesting deck from our opponent. I don't think I've seen a Resurrect style deck with big minions and Awaken the Makers. Going into game 26.
Lunara versus Gul'dan.
Your souls shall be mine.
The forest fights
Up against a
back.
Warlock. Want to mulligan as if it's discard Warlock. That's the most aggressive Warlock deck that's being played. And you want to make sure when you're against it, when you're not sure if your opponent's going to be a control deck or an aggro deck, you mulligan as if they're the aggro deck. Aggro, you really want the starting cards in your hand to be good in that matchup. Control, you have a little bit more leniency, more time to draw into the cards that matter there. So we're going to keep the Rising Winds and the Spellstone. Rising Winds good for the 3/2 that lines up really well against Malchezaar's Imp or Void Walker. Sure enough, it is discard lock. Happy to see the Fist of Draxus removed this early. We're not worried about getting burned out. What we're worried about is losing tempo on the board. So we're just going to play a 3/2. They have another Fist of Draxus. Luckily it goes face. They have to trade in their 3/2. So here I decide to Ferocious Howl to upgrade our Spellstone. And I don't really want to play either of our 2-drops. I want to play them together to get the extra value with Steladris. Opponent's just drawing a lot of cards, not putting out too many stats.
Your
Your magic shall not
I decide to just Spellbreaker the Imp. I don't want to place Steladris into that board. The 3/8 taunt is a bit of a problem. I'm considering Elysing. Getting another Spellstone is excellent. However, we would overdraw. There are cards I want to draw in our deck right now, and we can actually make a bigger board impact with a Steladris, Spellstone, and Rising Winds play.
mage.
The Spellbreaker plus the Spellstone can get rid of their 3/4.
Free your mind from its bonds.
And I'd rather get rid of their 3/4 than their 4/3. The 4/3 has less HP, it's easier to remove, and the taunt makes board trading much more difficult. Doomguard is not lethal. We're just out of range for that.
No, don't. It's still good.
Expired Merchant. Kind of happy to see that. It's not many stats. Spellstalker is a bit more scary. Opponent, luckily for us, trades into our Steladris instead of going face, so we have a bit more HP to work with here. Definitely going to trade the Eagle into one of the Fellstalkers. What I'm doing right now is I'm thinking I definitely am going to play 3 2-mana cards. The question is, or we're going to definitely play 2 2-mana cards, the 3/2 and the 1/5 taunt. The question is do I cycle or hero power? Hero power, we can hero power down the 2/1 Expired Merchant, which takes off more on the board, but I'm wondering, do I need to draw for Reno? So I'm counting how much damage would be on board, and I think we decide we don't need to draw for Reno because with the impact we can make on the board this turn, following up with Malfurion on the following turn, it's very unlikely they'll be able to actually finish us off. Doomguard doesn't do it, Soulfire doesn't do it. Only Doomguard plus Soulfire would actually kill us. And so we don't need to start drawing with the Take Flight. However, our opponent does in fact have the Soulfire plus Doomguard.
Well played.
It's a good game from our opponent. Pretty well played. Here we go, game number 26.
Lunara versus Malfurion.
Up against a Druid. Most likely Jade Druid.
Archdruid.
During the beginning of the seasons, you might see a few more Embiggen aggro Druids. So this hand is interesting. Normally we want to mulligan for card draw and Lotheb. However, Bran, Zola, and Zephyrus just work so well together. I decide to keep this. And Zephyrus is kind of nice because it is good against both the slow decks, and if it happens to be aggro, it's pretty good for it too.
Nature's blessings.
Interesting play from our opponent, deciding to go with the Biology Project on turn 1. My guess is they're thinking this is the mirror, and so they're not scared of us being aggressive. In the mirror, that's us thinking that they are Jade Druid. Just a lot of ramp from our opponent. Pretty strong start. I'm just going to keep cycling. The way we win this matchup is just chaining Lotheb effects so they can't play spells. and then eventually closing out with a Bloodlust off of Zephyrus. And we're in no rush, we just want to keep drawing.
Crystal clear. This will be good.
Something to note, I forgot to mention, on our opponent's Fungal Fortunes earlier this game, they milled their Kelthos. So that's was a huge bonus for us, not having to deal with all that mana cheating. Just gonna play something out there, use up all of our mana. Gonna wait to do the Brand Zephyrus for the right moment. Now here I'm quite surprised. Our opponent plays Glowfly Swarm, and suddenly I remember that Token Druid has recently been getting popularity. Sure enough, there's a Soul of the Forest. I decided to coin out Brand Loatheb. It stops them from doing tons of Savage Roars. It really stops them from playing anything on their next turn. Zephyrus, I could have played Zephyrus. The problem there is if I wanted Zephyrus and board clear, I wouldn't be able to follow with Zola. And then our Zephyrus is gone. Zephyrus is our best card in this matchup. It's the only way we have a board wipe. Here the plan is we're going to Loatheb again until we have enough mana to play Zephyrus, Zola, and the board clear on the same turn. They trade off our Brand, which is pretty smart. I'm just gonna try to... What are you doing here? Oh, I see. So, I decide I'm gonna Zephyrus. Ah, yes, I see that, our line. We're gonna Zephyrus, and then the following turn we can Zephyrus Zola or Zephyrus. And that way we don't lose our board clear guy. This makes things a little difficult for us. They are not making a wide board this turn. And so we can't really play the Zephyrus, but that means we can't really play any other minions. Otherwise Floop will lose the Zephyrus tag. So we're just going to remove the 5/5 by gaining armor off the branching paths, upgrading the spellstone so it does 6 damage, killing the 5/5. And we can't play either of our 2-drops. We need to keep Zephyrus, Floop in Zephyrus form, and we don't want to play Zephyrus until they have a wide board. And so this is the downside to the line that I went with. I think playing the Loatheb on that turn, the Floop as Loatheb on that turn, where I instead went for the board clear, might have been a misplay. Because we're just stuck here, we can't play any of our creatures. And so, here I'm going, enough is enough, we're just going to play Zephyrus and copy it with Zola. Yes, we'll have one less Zephyrus total, but having minions on board, I think, is going to be more impactful than just waiting and doing nothing. Go with the Cabal Shadow Priest. It can help steal a minion that is buffed with Soul of the Forest. It's interesting, Poison Seeds really does nothing in this matchup, because our opponent is just as happy with the 2/2s as whatever we destroyed usually. Definitely need a Zephyrus this.
Your wish is my suggestion.
Another line actually could have been to Cabal Shadow Priest trade and play the 1/5 taunt. That could have worked out well, because here we play Baron Geddon thinking, great, now they have to remove this if they ever want to stick a board. Nice. It's just that deck has quite a bit of removal to deal with it. Now we're out of board wipes. Yep, the Spellstone showing just how powerful it is. They're able to remove the Geddon and develop a board with Soul of the Forest behind it. We have no more board wipes. Starting to look scary. Definitely going to be a Cabal Shadow Priest. That takes off a lot from them.
Let me change your mind.
And then we're going to need the 1/5 taunt Druid of the Swarm. Try. I'm thinking of maybe can we get away with silencing one of their 1/1s, but I think it's too easy for them to lethal us if we don't play the 1/5 taunt.
This'll be good.
I'm not going to trade into one of their 1/1s. We don't want them to have a 2/2. I'm thinking what's likely going to happen if they buff their board up with permanent buffs, we might need to Poison Seeds. Luckily, we dealt with their first wave and had time to gain a lot of armor, so we are sitting here at 45. Especially with the 1/5 taunt, there's really no way they can lethal us this turn. And they are down to Savage Roar, as well as a Mark of the Lotus. So this turn, we want to definitely drop Sludge Belcher. The only other thing to really play with that is the Spellbreaker. Fenril doesn't do anything, Poison Seeds doesn't do anything, Mulch might give them something even better than what they have. Trying to decide what I want a Spellbreaker. Definitely the Wisp, it'll become a 1/1, so it dies off to our Wisp. Also kills the 2/2 that was beneath it with the Soul of the Forest. And then we'll kill off the 2/2. Here we can see our opponent is just running out of steam. We've gone through both Glowfly Swarms, both Soul of the Forests, one of their Whispers of the Woods. All they really have left is one Whisper. And if we make a huge board, they can technically Spreading Plague, but if we have a huge board, it's probably off of Enzoth, so our board is probably bigger. Looks like we pretty much had this game. They've run out of steam. And the Reno just really is the final pin in this game. I'm thinking I probably want to trade with my hero power into their 4/1 before I heal with the Reno.
This'll be good.
Trade off into their 2/2 with our Shadow Priest. So they have fewer minions on board. And I think our opponent sees the writing on the wall here and concedes. So an interesting deck that's gaining popularity. Spell Druid. Worth thinking about in the mulligan.